The Department of Justice says it's bringing back the death penalty. The federal government will execute people for the first time since 2003. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi brings us the story. He also tells us about Catholic teaching on capital punishment.
Wyatt, we're not talking about state executions, which have continued, but the federal executions, which haven't taken place in 16 years. Now the federal government says they're going to execute 5 death row inmates starting in December.
With these words, Catholic Attorney General William Barr brings back the federal death penalty.
The Justice Department upholds the rule of law, and we owe it to the victims and their families to carry forward the sentence imposed by our justice system.
But those who write American law debate the reinstatement.
We know that we have executed innocent people in this country before, and we ought to make sure we're not doing that. I don't think there's a rhyme and a reason to doing it now, except that Trump is having a bad news week, and Mueller was yesterday, so he needed to do what he does, which is change the conversation and do that.
Texas Republican Louis Gohmert was a judge who sentenced people to death.
It is very important that we have a fair system. So I'm not opposed to its implementation, but you got to make sure the safeguards are there so that innocent people don't end up there.
Although the church always allowed for the death penalty, St. John Paul II taught its need to protect modern society was very rare, if not practically non-existent. And in 2015, Pope Francis urged Congress to end the death penalty.
Since every life is sacred, every human person is endowed with unalienable dignity, and society can only benefit from the rehabilitation of those convicted of crimes.
Last year, he revised the catechism. The death penalty is inadmissible because it is an attack on the inviolability and dignity of the person. Moral theologian Thomas Petrie explained.
The Holy Father is not changing the church teaching because the Pope cannot change church teaching. The church teaches that the state has a right to use the death penalty. The Holy Father, in this revision, following upon John Paul II's revision in 1997, is simply saying that given certain circumstances in modern society, the death penalty really ought not to be used. It's inadmissible, he says.
A Catholic organization that fights the death penalty called Catholic Mobilizing Network says the reinstatement is unconscionable. Former President Barack Obama in 2014 launched a nationwide investigation after a botched state execution in Oklahoma. Today, the Department of Justice says they've wrapped up that probe and executions at the federal level can continue. At the Capitol, Jason Calvi, EWTN News Nightly.